everybody. Alan Holt here. Going to be talking through the tropics over the course of however long we're on this Facebook Live. Time right now is 9:03. It is Wednesday, June the 26th. And we'll be walking through the forecast. Right now, the focus primarily for us, other than the heat, is going to be on the tropics. We've got a pair of tropical waves out in the Caribbean and the Atlantic, and both of those, we're going to be watching. The second of the two looks a little bit more interesting, I'll put it that way, than the first one. So we'll bring up the graphics here. Before we get to talking about that, last week's rain is making its way down the Nueces River, and the Nueces in McMullen County is right now under a flood warning. That was issued last night around 10:30, and that's great news for us, because that means that runoff from last week's rains is working, into Lake Corpus Christi. That's where the Nueces River runs into. So we should see a rise. I don't know how large that rise will be, but we should start to see a rise in Lake Corpus Christi with this water starting to flow downstream. Lower the chair there. Flowing downstream into Lake Corpus Christi. By the way, we're streaming this live on our digital platforms. Again, 9:05, June the 26th. So if you're not watching it live and it's not that time, this may be old information. I did want to just give a shout out to our YouTube crowd. What I'm going to try to do with this one is see if I can't answer any questions that come in on our YouTube channel. There's a pretty good crowd over there. We've got almost 30,000 followers on our KIII 3 News YouTube channel. And I just want to make sure that I get to any questions that may pop up on that one. So I'll be looking at that feed for questions tonight, and we'll revisit that if need be. So again, Nueces River under a flood warning in McMullen County, and that is going to be flowing into Lake Corpus Christi. Overall, the watershed over the last week has risen about 1%, not a ton. We went from 25% up to nearly 26%, kind of dropped a little bit Monday and Tuesday, and now we're seeing another rise in it with this new runoff coming in. So the last month it's dropped 1%, but over the last week it gained 1% back, and we'll see how much Lake Corpus Christi can go up because of that. So I just wanted to give that update concerning the lake levels, and of course with the rains come the mosquitoes. The skeeter meter, if you haven't been outside, there's that mosquito activity is certainly on the rise. So standing water, places that are protected by wind, tall grass, if you got really tall grass, the shrubs, that's where the mosquitoes tend to hang out, and they're especially bad at dusk and dawn, sunrise and sunset. So that is kind of one of the byproducts of rain here. We live in a kind of a subtropical, tropical environment, and we get buggy when it rains a lot. Right now it's 85 out, it's warm, it's humid, feels like 97 with all the humidity in place. And a light southeast wind under 10 miles per hour. Little line of storms fizzling out in southeast Texas, now in the Gulf. Most of what you see on the map is heat-related advisories. Those are preemptively out for tomorrow. Going to be hot, and a lot of this stuff is rotating around high pressure that's centered up over Texas right now. So, hot weather for us, stormy weather up down the Red River Valley there. That's what that yellow polygon is, a severe thunderstorm watch box. And that's where the active weather is going to be. So tropics now, this is going to be the bulk of this discussion. I will try to get to questions, especially on the YouTube channel, KIII News. If you're watching over there and you have a question, I will specifically try to, look at that commentary if there is any that come in. I know most of the people watch on Facebook, but I just want to make sure that the YouTube crowd is served properly. This is the latest right now. The two tropical waves that are out there, 94L and 95L, if you're trying to follow along or look for data on these, those are what they're called, Invest 94L, Invest 95L. And that's just a designation for, the Atlantic Ocean. The L designates Atlantic, and then the number cycles from 90 to 99 over and over and over and over. And so that's where those names come from. And all it means is that these tropical waves are being investigated now by the Hurricane Center. So the system in the Caribbean, we'll get to that one first. It's fighting Saharan dust. It doesn't have the best environment for development, and as it continues west to northwest, likely going to hug the Central American coastline, which also isn't great for development. And then over the weekend, looks like it'll move through the southwestern Gulf, the Bay of Campeche, and that's where, it'll kind of follow in the footsteps of what that storm tracked over, what the previous invest over last weekend, same type of deal. It'll cross the southwestern Gulf and move into Mexico, likely over the weekend. We're not terribly concerned about that feature. A lot of high pressure over us right now, and that should keep that system well to the south. The other one, the one that's out in the Atlantic Basin, the main development region of the Atlantic, that looks like mid to late August or, September, early September, more so toward the peak season. We're talking about a longer track type of system across the Atlantic. That certainly doesn't look like late June to me. Typically, we're seeing stuff in the Western Caribbean or the Gulf. We're not seeing stuff this early, way out in the Atlantic Basin. So, the sea surface temperatures are warm. We're transitioning to a neutral / La Nina type of setup in that teleconnection, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. Before the season started, saying this looking like an active season, it's already starting to, look busy, right? So 95L, that one is not organized right now. It's got a lot of dust to get through. That's obvious, that brown shade right there. There's a ton of dust in the main development region of the Atlantic Basin. So that's going to be a deterrent for organization. But that feature looks a lot better in terms of development as far as the models go compared to its counterpart, Invest 94L. So we'll walk through this. I'm going to let this loop out all the way through this Sunday, June the 30th, and I've got the two disturbances circled there. And what we're looking at is the wind flow and pressure pattern aloft about 18,000 feet up in the atmosphere. And we're also looking at where these pockets of energy are tracking at that same level, about 18,000, 20,000 feet up. So not at cruising altitude like a plane, but more so in the middle parts, of the atmosphere. So you'll see how these move west. The tropical wave crossing over the Yucatan and the southwestern Gulf, that's 94L, that's Sunday, and that stays south of Texas. That's the one we've been talking about, so far this week. We've been talking about it Monday, Tuesday, now today. We haven't really been terribly worried about that, causing a ruckus in Texas. We may catch a few showers, isolated, kind of like last weekend. Remember, we had a few showers off that disturbance that was in the southwestern Gulf. Wasn't a washout by any means, but we may see isolated stuff because of that. And the pressure over Texas, high pressure, that's going to buffer the state, and not terribly concerned about that one. Meantime, late weekend, Sunday, 95L, the other invest tropical wave, will be approaching the Caribbean. And this is where, forecast modeling beyond this point right here, right now, is going to start to become a little bit murkier. I do think we'll have a system moving into the eastern Caribbean Sea by early next week. So as we enter July, 95L, or whatever it's called at that time, could be Beryl, that's the next name up. But 95L will be in the eastern Caribbean. And at this point, I think that a lot of possibilities are on the table. There's no real skill in being able to identify exactly what this is going to do. We're going to be talking 7+ days from here. We're Wednesday right now. This is next Tuesday. But a lot is going to do. Now we're on to Wednesday of next week, a week from today. A lot's going to, have to do with how the upper level wind flow pattern is looking at that time. So, there's a couple of possibilities I laid out here. The top one, the weakness between the highs. If there's a big gap between the high pressure features, if you look up to where this says pressure and energy, there's another little piece of energy out there off the eastern Atlantic coast of the U.S. That represents a trough, and that could want to pull this thing more to the north next week. Again, this is a week from today. So nothing's going to be confident, nothing's going to be set in stone here. I'm just going over some of the possibilities that I'm seeing with respect to the future of this thing. So a northward pull with a couple of things, a gap between those two highs and a trough between them, kind of acting like a vacuum to try to pull that up. The other possibility is that these regions of high pressure are more unified. They're very strong. They suppress northward movement and drive this thing more to the west towards Central America. That's another possibility. I think both of these are equally likely at this point. I don't think one is more favorable than the other. It's a week out from this point. And then the third, which I didn't put on here, is basically everything in between those two solutions, right? So we could have kind of a little tug to the north, and it sends it toward the Gulf somewhere by the late parts of next week. So that's about where I'm going to stop our in-house modeling. A lot of this is from the European here that we're showing. But I think a better way of looking at this longer term, again, if you've watched Channel 3, I'm a huge, naysayer to the longer range stuff. The reliability beyond 7 to 10 days, very poor. You shouldn't be making decisions based on this. This is just, we're looking way out into the future. So reliability is going to be poor. But for this, I just wanted to show, what some of the ensemble forecasts are showing. And this is the European ensemble. This is through Saturday, July the 6th. And you see those options represented within the modeling. You see the stripes off the Atlantic coast of the U.S. That's that little trough that tries to develop. You see some of the members of the ensemble. There's like 50 iterations of the European represented on this thing. A lot of them are strong too. You see those pink lines. You're talking about 80 to 100 knots on the wind speeds, over 100 miles per hour. You got a group that want to pull it north. You got more that want to send it west, and you've got some in between. And that's the European ensemble basically saying Central America to the southwestern Atlantic, all possibilities, right? So it's just, you can't really say much beyond this feature getting into the Eastern Caribbean Sea. See how all of the lines are pretty congruent into the Caribbean as it works into the Caribbean? There's a lot of confidence in that. I always say when the spaghetti is in the bag, you've got a confident forecast. When the spaghetti is spread out on the table, I always said spready. When the spaghetti is spread out all over the place, low confidence in the forecast. And you see how it fans out. Central America to the southwestern Atlantic, the Bahamas area, Hispaniola, all of that in play at this point. And by the way, this goes out through Saturday, July the 6th, 7 a.m. That's how far out this goes. So even still, let's say hypothetically something came this way, it wouldn't be this weekend, it would probably be after next weekend if that even happened. So that's about the time frame we're looking at. We're looking way long range. Again, this is not to say it's coming here or there or anywhere else. It's just showing all of the possibilities that are out there because the confidence is low. This is the GFS ensemble for the same time frame through Saturday, July the 6th, 7 o'clock in the morning. GFS shows something similar. You've got more of a pull to the west towards Central America, less of a pull to the north, but some of the members that are stronger pull it north. And that's also possible. So both models are pretty confident on this thing coming in to the Caribbean early next week, about a week from now, right? And then beyond that, there's going to be a fork in the road. Which way it goes, that's not an answerable question right now. Again, just want to pay attention to our YouTube crowd, but it doesn't seem like too many people are on for commenting. So, just looking at this data, this is what we're looking at. So long range reliability is poor. We are going to get some Saharan dust this weekend around the top of that first tropical wave that works across the Gulf. So that will happen. We're going to see more haze in the sky, sunsets, sunrises, more vibrant. This tends to suppress tropical activity. And remember, there's a lot in the Atlantic right now too. So that system that's out there, maybe the European model, it's a little more aggressive with its development. Maybe it's not accounting as much for the Saharan dust. There's all these different features and caveats that are out there, and right now the best thing to do is just be in the know, be aware that there's a couple of systems out there and we're watching them, right? That's where we're at in terms of our prep, is just to be aware that it's out there, in addition to your normal preseason hurricane preparations. Some of you with the Saharan dust may feel allergy-like symptoms. Allergy meds aren't going to do much for you. This is an irritant, not an allergy, so it's dust. If you turn a fan on or something, or you got a dusty, roomy dust that gets in your nostrils, you'll sneeze, right? It's an irritant. But the dust is going to be here over the weekend, and it'll be here into next week too. So hazier skies as that Saharan dust starts to come in, for sure by Sunday, but it'll start to filter in maybe as early as Friday, Saturday, and then be more noticeable second half of the weekend and into early next week. So that's 7-day looks. Leading up to 4th of July, aside from an isolated shower or two day to day, I don't see a whole lot of change in the weather day in, day out. It does get a little bit breezier Friday and Saturday, but 10 to 20 with gusts to 30, that's kind of par for the course around these parts. And then the other days look a little bit quieter, but still some gusts up around the 20 to 25 mile per hour range. Heat index going to be up around 110, give or take, a degree or two on the feels like temperature. So, that's what we're looking at. We're going through all this stuff real slowly. I'll go back to just the tropical outlook from the Hurricane Center, see if I can't answer any questions. It's 9, on my watch, it's like 9:22. Our software says 9:23. So June the 26th, that's when we are live. And I'll see if I can hang on here to answer any questions. If you're just logging on and you have questions, I suggest rewatching. Just spent a solid 20 minutes going over the forecast here concerning these tropical waves. But it looks like, yeah, no questions on YouTube. I think we've got the NBA draft on our channel right now. Chris Thomason was telling us we may go on 10, 15 minutes late. Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes late. So, the draft coverage will be on. We'll be on right after. We're waiting just like you are for the news if you are a 10 p.m. news watcher. So we've got to kind of just sit here and be patient with you, but we will be on after that. Happy birthday, Lonnie Hunt. All right, we're good. It looks like people are giving the birthday shout outs now. We'll see y'all at the 10 o'clock broadcast. And again, we'll be updating this day in, day out. Best thing to do if you're nervous, for example, right? If you're nervous about the tropics, the best way to combat it is with knowledge. Keep up with the current forecast. There's little changes that happen daily. So tropical forecasting, right? Just kind of vamp on this for just a quick second. If I could make a cooking analogy, when we're looking at, if you got any people that like grilling out there, right, talking to you, hopefully this resonates. But with respect to grilling, if you put a brisket on, have it smoking, right, for 12, 16 hours, however long it takes you to smoke a brisket. I try to shoot for about 12, like an 8-pounder. You're going to put the brisket on, and then it's going to take a long time. You're going to do minor things to it to get it to where you want it to be. You might, spritz it with some apple cider. You might wrap it. You might just, be doing other things with it, but it's minor adjustments to get to this final product, and it's a long duration thing. That's how tropical forecasting is. There's minor adjustments here and there. You're not going to see wild swings and fluctuations. Things tend to stay, it's a slower progression. Like severe weather, if you watched us with Alberto, you're talking severe weather, tornadic stuff. It was on the top side of that system. Severe things like a severe thunderstorm, a tornado, that's like cooking a steak. It's very quick. It's very sensitive. You're going to have to really adjust to things on the fly, and it's over, fairly quickly. It's not a long duration episode. So that's kind of the difference between forecasting styles, is this isn't going to change dramatically on a day-to-day, but there will be trends over the long term. And eventually, yes, it'll change from the raw meat that you start with to the finished product that you end with, right? The thing evolves, and that's what happens in this type of scenario. So to get back to the main point, just stay up with the latest. We've got a tropical section of our website. It's updated twice a day at minimum from our staff of meteorologists, and it's going to have the most current and fresh information that's tailored to us, tailored to the coastal Bend residents, our community. We're looking out for us. We are number one here. We're going to tailor everything with a focus and a mindset of how we're perceiving it based on, impacts, things like that. So it's a great resource. It's updated all the time. If you're curious still, I'd go maybe check it out and read what's on there right now. Everything we talked about on this is up on the website there, plus some forecast video. So we'll leave it there. Going to go get ready for the 10 o'clock news, which will be after the NBA draft. And hopefully we see you at 10 or a little after. Have a good night.